Hello. Hmm. Nope. Not what I wanted. Put it over here. Hello. Welcome. Welcome, my friend. Hmm. How do I get chat? Is that it? Aha. Hello. Hello, Rando. Hello, Rhubarb. Welcome. Can I write in the chat? Ooh, I can make it a separate window. Oh, did not want to do that. Oh, nice. Okay. Still figuring out the ropes of live streaming. Think getting the hang of it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another live stream of Politically Depressed. As always, I'm your host, Eamon McAdam. Start with a bit of a joke. Hello, helloys. Welcome. How are we all doing tonight? I'm wondering where I should position the camera. Because basically when I look down here... Okay. To look up here. Ooh, that's a lot of chest hair. Just letting people know that I am live. Ooh. Copy. Join me in the chat. Sorry, I know this is kind of dead air. Delicious. But yeah, today was a bit of a pretty big day. I don't know if anyone watched whatever, the news. I was on a live stream. But yeah, if anyone listened to the episode that I released a couple of days ago, this is a space to talk about it. Ask your questions. I've definitely got a lot on my mind, some stuff that I want to talk about and some stuff that I'm less inclined to talk about, but feel like I probably should. Because shit is fucked. Ooh, I'll do another photo of myself. How do I do this again? God, I feel like such a digital dinosaur sometimes. I need to get a new phone. Camera. Say cheese, everybody. No. There you go. That's me live. Ich. Ugh. Hmm. Just sorting some stuff out. Rhubarb asks, did something happen today? I haven't been looking at the news. Today was the like sort of funeral of Nasrallah and Safiuddin. Sort of a double whammy. Join me in the chat. There you go. Yeah. Hello. Welcome. How are we all doing? Hmm. Might change that actually. Is there some way I can change this so that it mirrors? How do I do this? Afif has the video of the funeral. Looks overwhelming. Who's Afif? It was a lot. It was huge. I don't know. I mean, people are estimating like 1,400,000. I don't know how accurate or who was giving these numbers, but it was a lot. It was the entire stadium and then some, which I think it's the biggest stadium in Lebanon. It's this one that's on the airport road. Possibly the biggest funeral in Lebanon since the Rafiq Hariri. Although I don't know if what I'm remembering is exactly his funeral or just a sort of a protest, mourning protest. The only other big funeral I can think of in Lebanon was Kamal Jumblat. Um, yeah. I feel like I should probably put the camera down here. So even if I'm looking at the chat, it kind of looks, I can just cut right. I play around with that. I want to give myself a bit of space though. Ugh. Check it out for people who are new though. Wait, what happens if I do this? Nothing. Um, what happens if I do this? Still nothing? YouTube. That's strange. Okay. Why is that happening? Hello? And then jump to... Oh, Firefox. Um... Okay, that's strange. Yeah, there's still a lot to figure out here. What if I put that up here? Nope. If I put that up here? Nope. What if I hide it? Open it up? Nope. You're supposed to be able to see Firefox. Okay. I guess I'll have to figure that out later. Hanks moved into Janine, yes. I think the first time since the second Intifada, or maybe even before. And that's definitely something to talk about. That, you know, yeah, there's this big separation between Gaza and the West Bank. but the policy is essentially the same vis-a-vis Zionism in Palestine. Um, and so the tactics are the same. It's the exact same leadership. It's the exact same army. And so there's sort of this, for the last, let's say, 20 years, like a different attitude, or like what's deemed acceptable to do in Gaza was not in the West Bank. But now it seems like that's just sort of whatever. It was like a false, you know, maybe they felt like they weren't able to at the time, but now I guess they do. Pretty fucked up. 2002, yeah, second Intifada. Actually, hmm. No, I'll do that another time. There's a really good, a really important film by Mohammed Bakri, Palestinian filmmaker, called Jenin Jenin. Oh, hello, Bam Bam. Um, filmed in 2002. He was the first person to he skipped past the Israeli um sort of in 2002 there was this sort of notorious massacre, and once the Israelis pulled out, they sort of prevented anybody from going in to see what they did. He and his camera crew were the first to just sort of like get behind the Israelis and do these interviews, and it's a very important film. Jenin Jenin. I might screen it again actually in light of the sort of like 2 months now of an assault on Jenin. First by the PA, Palestinian Authority. They sort of initiated this like war essentially on Palestinian militants in Jenin. Like not ironically enough, but like just using old Israeli equipment. But then, yeah, the Israelis themselves got directly involved as well. So I'll talk about that because that's been new. And before, during, and after the funeral, the Israeli drones were circulating Beirut. Yeah, and a couple of times piloted aircrafts made a show as well. Yeah, yeah. I mean, really fucking low. Actually, I don't know if people saw the footage of these planes going over Beirut. Yeah, I wish I could do this actually because I could show you. So what happens if I? Oh, oh. Okay, when I do that, that happens. That doesn't fix my problem. Aha! There you go. Uh, let's see. Nasrallah funeral planes. Carries out airstrikes, IDF. The hell's ANI? Yeah, yeah, this is fucking bonkers. Oh, is this live? Why? Yeah, that doesn't really capture it. I still have nightmares about these fucking jets. Like, only a few days ago, I had one. And what happens is that in the dream, it's kind of exaggerated. Damn it. How is this working? This is a live stream. Oh, there you go. Okay. Not the best footage. But no, there's more. There's footage where you literally can just like see them, like you can reach out and touch them. Um, and it's fucked up. It's incredibly low and like in formation. I think they broke the sound barrier as well, which for those who have never experienced it, it just sounds like an explosion. It feels like an explosion. Um, wait, did the AfD win The majority. Shit. Let me check that out. I mean, wait, where am I looking it up on my phone? AfD German elections. What happened there? I know this is very off topic. Oh, okay, they didn't win the majority, but still, the far right in Germany. Wait, why am I getting this in German? Change to English. There you go. So the AfD are the far right. The CDU are Christian Democrats, or like the ruling. First Merkel and now Scholz. This happened today, by the way. Oh wait, what? Oh, Scholz is SPD. No, isn't SPD the Socialist Democratic? I'm sorry. Oh, is this a mistake? Oh, I have no idea. This is not a Germany dream. Oh, sorry, you weren't seeing what I was seeing. I was looking at this. This is the results of. Oh, not all votes have been counted. Results of German elections. Fun, fun, fun. How's it been in Vienna? It's been all right. There are also local elections soon. I'm getting a lot of FPO ads. Um, Also very similar vibes to Germany in terms of I don't know, the feeling is that the right is gaining a lot of ground and there's not like a serious opposition. There's kind of like the center is just sort of moving along, sort of assimilating a bit of the far right into itself, like kind of like in the US, like how the Democratic Party um my god, just tried so hard to coddle to like the right wing. Um but why would you vote for, Nazi light when you can have the real deal? You know what I mean? But yeah, I'm not that tapped into Vienna or Austrian electoral politics. But my vibe definitely is that there's not enough feeling of sort of urgency about the matter. Um which is that to me is concerning, like aside from anything else. Like people know. Like everyone knows shit's fucked. Everyone knows that like no, that sums it up. That shit's fucked. But I think there's a certain aspect of doomerism and cynicism, and impotency that sort of drives people to stay. I don't know. Again, I was gonna say stay silent, but I think that's part of the problem because I think a lot of people are like, okay, so if I speak up, like, what does that do? What material things can I do? What tangible things can I do? And that information's there. It's just hard work, and it just seems like people. God, this is a scary conclusion I don't want to make because it is fucking cynical. But that people are only driven to act when shit's at their door. I really hope that's not actually the case, but like I'm constantly proved or like shown that that's a kind of deciding factor. Um, and so now, the violence of empire is still kind of over there, or it's still very much so like in the margins of the society, um, to migrants, to like queer and trans folk, uh, asylum seekers, black and brown folk. Like it's just like, you know what I mean? It's kept a bit peripheralized, even when it's happening right here. And yeah, I don't know. There's that very famous poem by this what like German clergyman in the 40s. First they came for the trade unionists. And I did not speak out because I'm not a trade unionist. And so it sort of feels like yeah, that is basically the cynical thing I don't want to accept as like a matter of fact. That people are waiting for then they came for me. Because the poem goes, then they came for me, and there was no one left to defend me or to speak out against it, you know? And then this guy was sent to a concentration camp. He was German, he was white, he was Christian, he was a fucking like priest. It's very much so this kind of thing that like I think some people feel a bit safe. Oh, it's not gonna get too bad. Um but yeah. Why do my lips look so red? Do I have a filter on? iPhone. Oh. I do have a little bit of saturation. It shows. Hello, Anthony. Tony. So yeah, did anyone listen to my episode? I released it a bit late this week. I'm really hoping basically what I'm gonna do is next week, like release it maximum Wednesday, so that people have a bit more time to watch it or listen to it before then coming here with any questions or sort of I don't know desires for elaboration. Ugh. How shall we react to comrades commemorating the memory of Nasrallah? Yeah, it is difficult. It is difficult to sort of because we're not talking about a purely political thing. I mean, it is very fucking political, but emotions are very high, and I'm sort of figuring out as well how to react because there's some people where it's just like I get it. There's a lot going on. Um, I've seen Syrian comrades bothered by that. I know it's difficult. It's but it puts us in a bit of a sticky situation. But I'm basically gonna refrain from having any like deep. I mean, I'm obviously gonna talk about stuff, but for the time being, I think I'm gonna let it simmer a little bit. Only because yeah, the things are very intense, and I don't know. It's like there's a lot of grief and mourning and whatever, and still present humiliation. But that is something I'm definitely thinking a lot about. But I'm just not prepared to sort of like air too many opinions on it or thoughts. Definitely no hot takes. Uh, there were a lot of interesting flags, actually. Not interesting, but like, I mean, there's one thing for sure that I think is like the main alleyway into talking some of these things like a bit critically, which is the kind of so the new head of Hezbollah is this guy named Naim Qasim, and he's very much so not Hassan Nasrallah. Um, he's very, very like low charisma, and his speech today was You know what I mean? Like a kind of career defining speech. Like it's a big fucking moment. And it was just very underwhelming, like any of his speeches so far. But one thing he said that's like interesting, which is their commitment as Hezbollah to remain in their alliance with Harakat Amal, the Amal movement, which is still headed by Nabih Berri, who I noticed actually, I still need to do some more research in terms of like, obviously, like Arabic books. But there's only one book in English written about Nabih Berri, and it was published in 2011. And for someone who's basically like the one of the, I think the single most important and influential man in Lebanon and Lebanese politics, that's a bit shocking. And there's very little like publicly known. Like people know, but like all the information I've ever heard about him has just been through like conversations, sort of through gossip. I mean, gossip not in a kind of that it's invalid. It's just kind of people saying like, do you know what he did during the war? Oh, I heard this decision was because whatever. I heard that Berri decided this. Um, it's a bit, you know, and so I feel like that's a really important thing to point out and like go through Birre to basically be like, okay, they're allied with this guy, you know, and this guy in himself, and then the party itself and its effects and its like actual like structure within the Lebanese government and the Lebanese state, and but yeah, internationalism and anti-imperialism by Postone. You've mentioned Postone. I should probably whatever check it out. I'll be perfectly honest. I have not been reading that much these days. I find myself a bit actually I'm more in the mood or more like able to, so I should whatever. Post on. Brad PR asks, what do you think the Western world is not able to comprehend about the funeral today? I mean, I don't know. I'm not a kind of one thing I definitely don't do anymore is like check in on CNN or BBC, you know what I mean? I've given up on doing that a very long time ago. And I see people still doing it, but I feel like it kind of breaks my brain a bit to like go through their headlines and kind of like correct it. You know what I mean? These posts where it's like, oh, corrected it for you, fixed it, New York Times. So I don't know what they are comprehending or like analyzing it to then say what they can't comprehend about it. I think in general, I think there's even a Memory TV ad, even though Memory TV is literal Israeli propaganda. It was founded by a guy who, um, people don't know this actually. But Memory TV. Oh, aha. Um, so Memory TV, if like I see a lot of people posting this, and some of it's funny and some of it's whatever. Um, you know, it's sort of like wild, weird takes by like Muslim sheikhs or political whatever, and very identifiable like above here. And so there's even like within our circles, kind of like Memory TV memes. But I think that's also kind of a bit dangerous because let's look at the Memory TV Wikipedia page. If you can still see it, there you go. Is an American non-profit press monitoring organization co-founded by Israeli ex-intelligence officer Yigal Kadmon, an Israeli-American political scientist made of Vermseo, whatever, in 1997. So yeah, like it's sort of like they find these clips or they do these translations wherein it's you know it services a certain end. Um, Dude literally served in the IDF. He was a quote unquote counter-terrorism advisor to Rabin and Shamir, you know? Like this is not something that people should just be sort of like circulating like ha 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 Muslims are so funny. You know what I mean? But either way, there's a sort of funny one with when the Americans killed Qasem Soleimani, wherein they say something like, let me see if I can find it. Memory TV Soleimani. Nope. But yeah, they were like, the West doesn't understand the effect that it had by assassinating Soleimani because they have no heroes. You know, their heroes are SpongeBob. Um, or you know what I mean? They're kind of like cultural icons in that way, or that kind of big figure, that celebrity kind of thing. Um, didn't seem to have the impact that they were stating when it was like, "Ooh, they've opened up Pandora's box." Hello, Sophia. Um, but he was a very, 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 very important figure, Nasrallah, and was very close to a lot of people's hearts. And I think one thing that's okay, if there is one thing that I think the Western media cannot comprehend, it is the importance of martyrdom, not just in the region, not just within Islam, but specifically within Shia Islam. And so yeah, I think that's like inaccessible to the mind, to the sort of perspective of Western media, who only see him as like a leader of essentially like an armed group. Maybe at best they can see him as like a political group, but yeah, the sort of new presence essentially, not just of this like former leader, but of a martyr, right? And a martyr who was killed by the Israelis um, during wartime in Dahiya. Like he never left. You know what I mean? So like there is this sort of cultural touchstone, religious touchstone even, and ideological one. And there was already a cult of personality around him. And I think that main thing, the thing of the cult of personality, because again, in the West, um, it doesn't exist. That emphasis, I mean, it exists, but not in that same way at all, of martyrdom, but also these sort of like religious, political figures. Um, yeah, Um, Bran PR'd asks, "Is that where LGT Let's Go Bomb?" Yeah, 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 yeah. So it's a meme, right? It's funny, and that's why it gets passed around even within our circles, even though it is like quite literally Israeli propaganda. Um, but because there are some funny, whatever extreme, whatever. I support LGBT. Yeah. But that SpongeBob thing, I think, is also kind of true. Um, because I also noticed that I think before Trump and before Obama, I think Obama was a very interesting like case that's like hard to replicate. But um basically my reading of American culture, let's say, is that celebrities kind of take the place of the old aristocracy. You know, the princes and countesses and whatever, like, oh, look at her and whatever. But the difference is those celebrities are basically like bereft of any actual political power, and so it's all aesthetic. Whereas in our region and in many other parts of the world, our politicians or those who are involved in politics still like have a celebrity status and have real political power, you know? Yeah. I think that's basically what they were trying to do with Kamala Harris. It just did not work whatsoever, and it just does not fit. As in the celebrityification. Um, they tried to do basically like an Obama 2.0, but for many reasons that does not work. It doesn't fit. And post Obama, I think people are very, very dubious of like, yeah. Brad PR says this is especially true of old Hollywood, where they are treated as untouchable deities, like Cary Grant, Marlene Dietrich. I don't know her. Hepburn Stewart. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, but also like if you go online, like there's stan accounts for some people that I'm like, oh, I did not know that this person even still made music or still still was acting in films. And they're diehard, you know? Um that kind of attention and fame used to be more associated with, yeah, nobility. But also it's something that didn't really exist. But anyway, in that nobility that also was connected to political and economic power. These people have economic power, but they're like, I don't know. Which is why also I cannot stand like how excited some people get when it's like, oh, this actress spoke out. I don't give a fuck. Who is she? Who's, you know? I remember this Zionist, who is this person? She was in that show Will and Grace, which really funny. Like even in Lebanon, there was a kind of like, actually Will and Grace is a very interesting show for me because um there was like a deep association with it, like especially like the first kind of like openly gay character in a show. And there's a kind of like representation. But then, you know, as I grew older and understood how colonialism works and whiteness works, it's like, oh, I got nothing to do with them at all. Like this is a whole different thing, and actually they're still sort of like within an oppressor's camp. Anyway, what's the show called again? One of the actresses, the main actress, the redhead. I was just talking about the show. How did I forget the name of the show? Someone remind me. Will and Grace. So Grace, the actress who plays her, said some shit about Montaz Zazezo, and I mean she's turned out to be like a huge Zionist, a genocide apologist, whatever, white feminist imperialist, whatever. Um, and Montez, like people sort of like sent him this stuff and was like, "Hey, look what this person's saying about you," and his response was perfect. It was just like, "Wait, who?" Because that is it. Like who? Like okay, some has been actress from a show in the 2000s has an opinion on Israel. Like it's shitty, and yeah, I think you know what I mean. There's influence, and like I'm not saying that it's like harmless, but it's just kind of, I don't know. There's not like a depth, like oh, she has like a concrete thing wherein it's just regurgitating propaganda and basically like imperialist dogma by some white woman. And honestly, for me, I feel that same way when it's just some white woman says some good stuff about Palestine. I don't care. Like that's not showing up for me. For me, showing up as a person within the imperialist center as a white cis, especially like celebrity, middle class, upper class, whatever. I need a lot more. I need a lot more for it to feel like you're actually doing something as opposed to just wearing a little pin with your shoe. Mary says they speak out but never spend significant amount of their wealth to actually fight for any cause. Yeah, precisely. And their wealth or their time. And I really just don't care. You know what I mean? Like, because in the context of how urgent the situation is, just saying a thing or wearing a pin, I know this is like an old discourse from literally like a year ago, but it still applies. Um, but for me, I think my thing is that like I don't like when they do it, but I also just don't care. But I don't like it when people around me post these things as though it's a big deal. Because to me, that feels very it makes us look weak, in my opinion. Like, it makes me feel like we'll literally take anybody. You know what I mean? Like, as long as you say a few nice things. A good example is like there are certain like white supremacists, like kind of border neo Nazis that will like not accept, but be like, hey, look, a white person agrees with us. You know, to me, there's like a deep inferiority complex. If we feel kind of empowered, or it's not just us, stupid Arabs. Look, a white person said it as well. Kind of like how a lot of people used to like kind of like with like Chomsky, even though it's a very different case, but there's still like a kind of thing like it's not the Chomsky of like, hey, have you read his stuff? Have you looked at the literature or the scholarship or his like citations or the like? Wow, the minute I said Chomsky, 3 people dropped out. Um, but yeah, there is just more of a kind of like a look. Here's a Western, I mean, a Jew who agrees with us. That's a different case in general, not just Chomsky, but also like Jewish activism. I have a much higher standard for like white Christian whatever in the West, especially people of a certain class status. I've gone pretty deep in this. Has anyone listened to? Oh, Dietrich is an icon, queer butch dame that defied hetero. Oof. Let's check this B out. But yeah. So has anyone listened to the episode? Did anyone do their homework? Is this person by any chance in All About Eve? No. Hitchcock's stage fright. I've never seen that. Oh, Mary. How do you like it? Was it one of the better ones? I think it was actually one of the more difficult ones for me to record. It took me a few times. Because I do think we have to be quite careful in general, but also, I mean, in this specific case. Marlene was a diva in Stage Fright and Icon. I haven't watched a Hitchcock film in a very long time. Jane Wyman, Marlene Dietrich, Michael. I've never heard of this film at all. Ah, Mary. Honestly, it was really good and informative as someone who's not really aware of Lebanese politics, but there was also so much that I don't know how to process it. Yeah. It's very difficult. Lebanon is a very complicated place, and so it's why I find it very frustrating when some people who know better return to a kind of very simplistic narrative. Um, like it just, I started that episode by saying Lebanon is the place where simple narratives go to die, and people seem to think that you can ignore history, and you just really can't. Um, like even very recent history, and there is a lot, but that's why I'm here. And if you have any questions, and I'll probably do more episodes. Heloise. I'm very sorry if I'm mispronouncing, but I have no idea what the accents are. listened to the episode and it got me suitably depressed. That's sad. I don't want to make people depressed. I just want to sort of like bring depressed people together so that it's like do a bit. I don't know. There's a part of me who's like afraid of like basically enabling my own depression and other people's. um, I don't know if that makes any sense, but as in, I don't. I titled this politically depressed because I think it's like a good, it's a funny name that like sums up a lot of stuff. But it's definitely like the base and the starting point, but not my end point. Like I do not want to remain politically depressed. I kind of maybe season 3 or 4 it'll change to like politically hopeful or like politically um something else. Emancipated. I don't know, like kind of politically healed. Brand PR'd and Lebanon is a new country relative to others. Isn't Beirut older than Lebanon? I mean, my grandparents are older than Lebanon. Um, and I mean, most nation states are very young. Like even something like Germany or Italy. And I think Italy only federated and became like a state, like a nation state, as we know today in the late 19th century, 1896 or something. And that's really not that old. That's just one generation before my grandparents. Er, but yeah, it's young, it's new. To me, it is sort of new, especially when I look at the history. And the sort of like core contradictions within its makeup, I think, are just constantly present and like exposing themselves. Or in the same way, again, that like I think the reason that Palestine galvanizes people so much is because it's like 19th century politics, 19th century colonialism in the 21st century. Um, and the effects of it are still very much so still fresh. Um, but yeah, Lebanon as a state is quite new. Is the new Lebanese government Helois says is the new Lebanese government not completely U.S. compradorship? Not completely, but yes, a lot for sure. It's been the case for a very long time though. Even in governments that had a lot stronger sort of like Hezbollah presence, there's definitely now more of a feeling, but also like a material kind of like U.S. Israeli hegemony, essentially. That, yeah, I think gets expressed as well in the sort of discussions of this might be a bit of a hot take, but there are certain expressions of sovereignty which are, let's say, at least aligned with sort of imperialist interests um, in the region. And here, I'm not going to be able to go into too much depth about what that means, but I definitely go through it quite a bit in the video essay, which, again, I said this for like 2-3 weeks, but inshallah, hopefully next week, hopefully Sunday. What I mean by a kind of like that these nation states are functionally neo-colonial entities, and any force that kind of like works to fully consolidate the states within the states, I think is bad, and I think reifies the colonial nature of these borders or of the region and the makeup. Looking forward, I am too. I've been sitting on this fucking video essay for like 2 months. And I'm not a very patient person. It's because it's still in my head, you know what I mean? And I'm waiting for it to come out to do a live stream, to do other discussions, to do whatever. And so I can't let it go. And it's just kind of been on like a low simmer for like 2 months. I am. But I think, I mean, there's also this feeling that like I'm worried that as soon as I like it's not going to be relevant, that too much time has passed since I was like conceiving of it. But what I'm discovering is actually no. It's constantly just becoming more relevant. But I think it is more there's sort of like certain readings that I hope people will make into it. Like when I spend a lot of time talking about Gamal Abdel Nasser, part of it is to talk about Gamal Abdel Nasser. Part of it is to like sort of like just sort of try to work to dismantle that myth and the place he holds in certain people's hearts. But there's another reason why I talk about Gamal Abdel Nasser, and it's like buried in the in the video essay. Mari says, I feel a bit depressed / sad only because of how strong the imperial / colonial powers are, and I know we can still fight it, and eventually they will fall, but it's just grim right now. Yes, indeed. Indeed, a Rooney. They are very strong, and it is very depressing, and that's another reason. Oh, sorry, I just moved the camera. Sorry. Um, there's a certain discourse which really frustrates me because it's very much like a sort of within. I don't know why I have this on. Actually, I'm not listening to anything. Um, there's a sort of analysis that basically like, oh, the U.S. is on the brink of collapse. You know, we don't really need to figure our shit out because it's just basically going to fall tomorrow. They're actually really weak, and I understand like not doing Israeli and Western and like imperialist propaganda by being like they're invulnerable. But also, let's be a bit realistic. They're not on the verge of collapse. And actually, in the moments of collapse, they're actually quite fucking threatening and terrifying and can do a lot of damage. So I find that discourse very frustrating. Mm. I'm hiding my cigarette behind this because apparently it's. I think eventually, once that starts like monetizing, then YouTube underdoes stuff that has depictions of tobacco use. Hmm. Apologies for anyone who's quitting. A little bit of CBD in there helps with the nerves. Politically anxious. That's another one. Although again, I do want to kind of come out of this sort of thing. I don't want to reinforce. Um, yeah. Heloise. Again, very sorry. Says my feeling was that the latest Israeli bombings plus the pager attack has been helping a feeling of unity for Lebanese people across ancestral division lines. I don't know if it's necessarily about ancestry, but actually no. You'd be surprised. Um, the recent aggression actually maybe exposed some of the divisions that already exist. And Israel is really like playing on it as well. Uh, by putting a target essentially like by employing a kind of sectarian tactic of like bombing not just like southern areas, not just Shia areas, but Shia like groups of people. And so like you'd have attacks that are like really far in the north that would like destroy an entire building, and we'd discover that it's a lot of displaced people from the south. And so essentially you created this thing, or Israelis created this thing wherein people were afraid to just like be with, you know, or around Shia people. But also there are people in Lebanon who celebrate these attacks. There are people in Lebanon who, for whom this is a moment of like joy and euphoria, as opposed to like, yeah, a common threat, regardless of political, historical kind of divisions, which are very real as well. Like they don't go away with a common enemy, but it's definitely not a unifying enemy for sure. There are a lot of essentially Zionists within Lebanon. Always have been. Like a wrecking ball, Sofia Ciente says, like a wrecking ball. I mean, they're collapsing or destroying their soft power. Yeah. No. The U.S. is definitely like waning, but again, in its moment of waning, it's doing a lot. It's doing horrible stuff. But it's very much so in this moment of like a kind of like a collapse of an empire where you get like madmen rising to the top. You have this geriatric what's the word? Octogenarian rule. Like my god, the amount of just like US senators that are just having strokes while talking about policy, you know, they're like then where we see them again like pulled out in wheelchairs. Mitch McConnell and who's that other one? The Democrat woman. Marie says that's so messed up. Divide and conquer, I guess. Yeah, divide and conquer. But again, I think divide and conquer as a tactic has always not just separated people who have natural solidarities with one another, but played on the already existing divisions and emboldening them. And yeah, to me, I make this point, I emphasize this point because I think there's a lot that's like, again, a big part of the video essay when I talk about Arab nationalism, when I talk about the Arab bourgeoisie, I don't mean to say that it essentially that there is a natural like, oh, we are Arabs, we love each other, we fight for each other's rights, and we struggle side by side with one another. And then there is an outside enemy, because this to me is a very reductionistic understanding of colonialism, essentially, or rather of seeing colonialism as a kind of single issue thing that essentially removes the existence of class within the society, of divisions, of patriarchy, of class domination, that in many cases colonialism uses to its advantage, you know, or like allies with. And so a lot of the Arab bourgeoisie are not just like collaborators, but they are, you know, oppressors themselves in their own right. Ugh. It's going to be a very fun video essay. I've been talking way too much about it, not just here, but like in general. Brand PR, diversity of opinion. Again, opinion, but also of like, again, my whole thing with using a materialist analysis is to kind of place the emphasis not necessarily on opinions or beliefs, but on material interests and sort of like social and economic and political capital. And so there's very much like a conflict of different vying interests. Um, that like we know which ones we oppose, kind of, but like there's sort of, I mean, like Jordan's role, the Hashemite dynasty's role in the partition of Palestine, so that they control large parts of Palestine between 1948 and 1967. Like we know to hate the Zionists, we know to see the Zionists as a colonial force that employed tactics of ethnic cleansing to dominate and control and essentially like colonize a land, Palestine. Um, but there's less discussion of Jordan's role in that. And again, it's not just a role of in like their opinion or their whatever, but their actual material connection to the land, their control of the land and the people, and their oppression of Palestinians within Jordan, but also within the West Bank, at least very specifically since between 48 and 67. God, I got so much shit to say about the Arab regimes. So much shit. Actually, I was meant to do an entire episode. This episode was meant to be kind of titled something like Free Palestine Down with Jordan or Down with the Jordanian Monarchy. But then, I don't know, there's just way too much going on in Lebanon. And to me, as a Lebanese, seeing the discourse, and to me, some kind of really scary discourse, to be honest with you, that I was like, no, I need to talk about this, or I can't talk about something else at the moment. Mari says, it's a given to me that those are also divisions that already exist that are exploited. I'm from former USSR. But I agree it's an important point to make. Yeah, yeah. No, and especially as like an activist or as an organizer from within this area, like these are things that are a bit like we're aware and we talk about, we connect all the dots, but there are certain things that are like, they're not just bad by extension. You know what I mean? Like the bad in their own right. And this is why I don't like the discourse that only exists within like, oh, they're a collaborator regime, as opposed to, yeah, I don't know, like as well as that, like, I don't know. This is why I talk about class all the time. Uh, Part of my propaganda efforts are increasing class consciousness. It's definitely growing up. And until honestly October 17, I'd hear very few discussions about class. Part of the reason why that is actually is because Arab nationalists, so-called Arab socialism, their whole conception is like, yeah, Lenin and Marx were correct about their analysis of like socialism and capitalism and whatever, but they were wrong about class. And their justification for how that makes sense is just bullshit. So it's just, but I think part of the effects of that, and with obviously like sectarianization, and obviously with continued imperialism and the like, that class took a sort of backseat to anti-colonialism, anti-imperialism, anti-sectarianism, but it's there. And these sort of like discourses were much more present in the 60s and 70s, but have been lost to time. Or rather, honestly, a lot of these theoreticians were murdered. Yeah. Lebanon is a very complicated place. Everywhere is honestly actually complicated. It's just like the more you look into it, like there is no simple situation. Ooh, Mischievous Casso asks, can we hear about Marx was wrong on class thought in regards to Arab socialism? Uh, let's Arab socialism. Show. Um, where is it? I found this fascinating. But essentially, it was Arab socialism is the thing that was adopted by most Arab nationalist regimes. The Baathists, the Baath Party, were sort of like the biggest of them in Lebanon and Syria and the whatever. Let's see if I can find. I'm gonna look for it and I'll sort of come back to it. Marx was wrong on class. It's just there's the kind of, because the emphasis on Arab nationalism was that of like unifying the Arabs as a people, and because what connected them as a people was not really well defined, as in there was this constant attempt to be like, okay, it's language, okay, it's the religion, it's in some cases geography, But since the emphasis was placed onto kind of nationality, onto that we are Arabs and should unify, then there was this lack of uh, emphasis on class, as in Arab workers should unify, right? And so a lot of these intellectuals and politicians who eventually were like rising the ranks, and especially those that were more allegiant to the military wing of some of these parties, then the emphasis became seizing state power and like nationalizing assets. So, for example, the nationalization of the Suez Canal in 1946, 1947, 57 is still hailed as like quite a big, like blow to British and French like empire, and it was. But what happened then is that it was nationalized and brought under the rule um, of the Egyptian bourgeoisie, and yeah, who later became bourgeoisie, but also at the time, the main benefactors of um, Arab socialism, Arab nationalism, were the petit bourgeoisie, which I talk a lot about in the video essay. But so there was very much so. I think there was also something, it's a bit deep, but it's also one of those things where it's like deep, but actually not that deep. Like there's a lot of writings on it and they have a lot of justification, but it's kind of like weird, unscientific, whatever. Unscientific. I don't like the whole scientific or whatever. But wherein they wouldn't explain something in a certain way because it sort of subverts their own basis. That is like they wouldn't explain away their right to rule. Um. Oh, okay. Well, here's a good sentence. Boo-boo. So Michel, actually never read how his name's pronounced. Michel Afla, Michel Aflaq, Syrian philosopher, socialist, and Arab nationalist. He's one of the like OG Syrian, or one of the OG Arab nationalist, Arab socialist Baathists. So Afla believed that classic international socialism of 19th century Europe was not suited to the Arab world, on the basis that Western socialism was, quote, forced to stand up not only against capitalism, but also against nationalism, which protected capitalism against religion, which defended it, and against every concept which called for conservatism and the sanctification of the past. In a written, you see what I mean? Where it's like, that's a big sentence. Those are definitely words. But what the fuck are you talking about? This is why like Arab history is so frustrating to read, or like it's so much a reliance on certain terms and slogans that are just like, what do you mean the sanctification of the past? In 46, Afla wrote, the Arab nationalists are socialists. Hence, there is neither incompatibility, nor contradiction, nor war between nationalists and socialists. Whatever. It's complicated. But yeah, there's stuff there. I see a general trend of class making a, yep, Sofia Ciente. I'm trying with that one, actually. Um, it's a real deal. Like, that's the thing. It's like, you cannot talk about class, but you're then ignoring something that's like a major, if not the major thing that's actually going on. Um, like again, I'm no like class essentialist, but you can't ignore it, and especially when we're talking about the masses of people. Um, it's like so. The discourse in Lebanon, I don't know, sometimes ignores the fact of like most people, you know. How are most people living? What's gonna be good or like helpful? And I think there's like so much detachment from the discourse of just the real lived experience of most people. And especially the people who are productive, who like do stuff, who make things, who keep the country running. I think across the globe, actually, COVID was a major revelation as well. Um, for many reasons, but one is that like it became apparent again who are essential workers. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of bonkers that the people who are most essential are often like compensated or treated the worst. And not even compensated, but you know what I mean, have the least amount of access to capital, even though the world would literally fall apart without them, or our societies would. Here I mean like, the grocer, the cleaner, um, I don't know, whoever were essential workers. I mean, fucking nurses and like, yeah. Race is also a big divider. Brian Piard. Yeah. No, race is definitely a big thing, and but I mean, race also does have its own like class. Uh, like race is a big thing, but again, it's there's a lot of really, I don't know, whatever analysis on race where it's like about prejudice. You know what I mean? Like the big discourse in Central Europe, the way that people have been like trying to criticize the far right is to say like against hate. And I think hate, I did an episode on this a while ago. I think hate and love, in a very liberal sense, are very bad ways to understand racism, and especially like structural racism, and especially white supremacy, because it's not as though it's just a problem that a few people hate other people because of the color of their skin, but the very real like domination of their bodies, of their time, of their labor, of their ability to lead dignified lives. And with it, there's a kind of wealth extraction. Um, you know what I mean? Like one of the worst manifestations of white supremacy, slavery in the U.S. and in like the entire New World, or whatever. The problem isn't so much that like you know they would say bad things or they would have bad thoughts about it, but rather, I mean, well, there's a lot of terrible, horrible, it's functionally a genocide, but you still see the effects of that. There is still this wealth accumulation that exists within like white households, in the United States, within whiter cities and whiter areas, and there's functionally like no inheritance, um, or like wealth accumulation within sorry, like black communities, for that reason. And so that's why like reparations is so important. It's not like, okay, now you can't say certain things, but that the damage that's done over hundreds of fucking years. Um yeah, anyway, sorry, there's a economic and like political thing always there, which is again, I think in that in the socialist analysis is included like in the kind of like um anti-colonial leftist kind of writings. Hilwaz says, "Am I wrong to feel that we owe the survival of Palestine to the Palestinian worker peasant class?" What do you mean we owe? I don't. I sorry. I just don't actually understand. Oh, as in Palestine still survives because of Palestinian workers? I'll just go with that being the case. Yes, 100%. I mean, again, we're just talking about most Palestinians. When you talk about workers, we are talking about most people. And especially in the last like 20 years, the Palestinian bourgeoisie have been, I mean, again, like we started, we're talking about Jenin. That started the assault on Jenin. Was initiated by the Palestinian Authority, who are functionally like security contractors of the Israeli occupation. What if I do this? Aha. Sorry, I know I'm on a page that's like quite irrelevant. But let's do the Palestinian. Because even the Palestinian Authority, actually, and I don't see this a lot, but is a sort of entity that's sort of backed by and to the benefit of the Palestinian bourgeoisie. Piece of shit. I switched there to be a little cheeky. Drink some water. Yeah. But yeah, when we're talking about Palestinian peasants and farmers and whatever, like there's something also really interesting about how then, I mean, even if you look at a kufiyya is kind of made up of different aspects of Palestinian like falahi, like farming and like a bit like attachment to land and the olive groves and fishing and the like. Do people know this actually? Is this common knowledge? Or not common knowledge, but as in like known within certain whatever, that like all the different parts of the kofiyeh have different symbolisms that point towards different aspects of like Palestinian like attachment to the land. But yeah, this is definitely where also like indigeneity becomes like honestly a helpful but also important framework when it comes to Palestine and it comes and like the settler colonialism of Zionism. Ooh, rhubarb gin doesn't know. Okay, here we go. Kufiye. The kafiye or kufiye. But oh, okay. Well, let's see it in Arabic then. Well, honestly, sometimes nope. Why am I on an Arabic Wikipedia page for the kafiye? It's not there. But essentially, yeah, there's the sort of lines I think are of the olive groves, fishing nets. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, the concept of sumud is very important within Palestinian culture, but also important to understand Palestinian attachment to the land. And one of the major forms of resistance to settler colonialism. That said, I think indigeneity is a shit concept for the rest of the region. Uh, won't get into that. But we've got a lot of leaders. We've got a lot of our bourgeoisie who claim indigeneity and then claim to kind of whatever, but then do capitalist colonial neo-colonial bullshit to the land, to the rest of the people. Um, yeah. Just a brief announcement in the midst of this. Uh, I've got a Ko-fi, so if anyone wants to tip, make this coffee mug jump about, you see, it just kind of jumped. Head over to Ko-fi and chuck me a few quid or pesos or lira. I don't know where people are calling in from. Calling in from, I very much so just aged myself there. Dial in, you know. Mom, I'm on the internet. Get off. Get off the phone. I'm old enough to actually remember that. Actually, that did happen. If someone was on the internet and you wanted to use the phone, you'd get this like, "Binom, binom, binom, meh." I'm old enough to have used a floppy disk. This like big square ass thing that would hold like 256 kilobytes. I want to hear more about that actually. More about what? Oh, capitalistic indigeneity and how it works elsewhere in the region. Yikes. Um, no, I don't know. I think there is just this thing wherein indigeneity kind of falls apart as a useful structure to understand certain societies. Um, which is more applicable in cases of actual settler colonialism. But I think trying to understand Lebanon from like who is the indigenous, because it's like a bunch of us are indigenous, and it's like, and I think honestly a part of that is also to the fact that this might sound like a hot take, but I think a lot of people use the framework of indigeneity discursively to basically describe who are the good and who are the bad. And the colonist is bad and the indigenous is good. Which, again, if there is like a clear cut situation of settler colonialism, I think that's sort of like a fine basis. But in a situation like Lebanon, like so many other places, it is not that clear cut. And there are certain ideas of righteousness, of ownership of the land, of what's the word, like conservativeship of the land, that the Lebanese do not do. You know what I mean? Like, we are the indigenous to the land. We know how to take care of the land. So therefore, if we take a few $billion from the World Bank and create this massive dam, that is not us, the stewardship of the land. Ah, there you go. Thank you. Stewardship. You know what I mean? Like some of the most violent forms of ecological destruction in Lebanon come from the Lebanese bourgeoisie themselves, in alliance with like colonial whatever. And so I don't believe it's a very useful thing to have generally a kind of like who is a good and who is a bad when trying to understand an entire fucking society. And but then also like in relation to the land, in relation to whatever. Yeah. I do have a lot to say about that actually, because I do see a lot of like people kind of claiming certain things of like, I don't know, like some people defending straight up dictatorship, mass murder, um, like people defending Bashar al-Assad and coming up and saying like, I'm an indigenous person to this land, I know what I'm talking about, and it's like, you fucking what? Like, You know what I mean? Like Bashar al-Assad was indigenous. Nabi Berri is indigenous. Um, Mahmoud Abbas is indigenous. Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is indigenous. Hamad bin Salman is indigenous. Like that sucks. Like what does that even mean then? You know what I mean? That's why I don't think it's a very helpful use of it. Um, would be fun if you made an episode dedicated to it. Yeah. I mean, it's partly within the video essay, but not necessarily. I mean, I see it also in the opposite. Like when we see Israelis like burning land or like destroying whatever, and like settlers setting fire to olive groves, and we see like, oh, this clearly shows that they are not indigenous to the land because look what they're doing to the land. And so again, then that just makes me think like, I mean, you know, there's a lot of arguments. There's a lot of like, we've got a lot on them. They've done a lot of evil shit. They're like fucked up. This is not one that we can claim that like we don't. You know what I mean? All right, that sounds a bit off, but you know what I mean. Oh, Sophia Chante, the computer was in the living room, so you would. We had one computer in my brother's bedroom, so I remember once trying to use it for exciting purposes while he was sleeping when I was like 12, and that was very embarrassing. Not have brought that up. Very much so. I did not know what history meant, what search history was. Fun times. Weaponizing identity for capitalism or fascism, yeah. No, and also, I don't know, indigeneity also sucks as a concept within Europe. The amount of times I've heard like Central Europeans be like, but we're indigenous to this land. And therefore we should be able to do whatever the fuck we want with it. And it's like, you know, it really falls apart. And actually, in a really interesting way, or like a really bonkers way, kind of can be used and reinforces a kind of nationalism and a xenophobia. You know, black people aren't indigenous to Europe, and so therefore they're invaders, and therefore we should be able to do whatever. These are all mutations. This isn't intrinsic to concepts of indigeneity. I just think indigeneity like is created through colonialism. You know what I mean? Like there's no need for a concept of indigeneity. Like pre-colonialism, like and pre-mass migration and pre whatever, like most of us are indigenous. You know what I mean? I mean, mass migration always existed, but you know what I mean. When is the cutoff point to be like, okay, we were here first? Because there's always gonna be whatever. Yeah, I can talk in the chat, can't I? Oh, funny. As I said, I'm still figuring shit out. So I'm thinking of doing more like returning to screenings. Um, and maybe using this format to do it. God, Lebanese names are so funny. You'd get the most like white name followed by the most like Arab ass, whatever. As you say, it makes sense when talking about historic or current oppression, but not within the land like the examples you give. No, and I mean it's a helpful framework sometimes, but I think it's not amazing sometimes. And again, I think it just there's this like false dichotomy of good and bad that I think is not a very good. Like it makes you feel good, like oh on the correct side or we're the good people, but it's like okay, the fuck does that then do? Sometimes I feel like there's a lot of need for political education, um, like very 101, where it's like okay, to what do we want to do with all this? Why are we talking about this? What's the point of talking about it? What's the point of getting engaged in politics? What's the point of even entering the discussion or sharing thoughts? Especially because there's so much spectacle, but also the discussions around stuff can sometimes be so much about like who can present themselves as the most radical. And again, the most radical in this case means, the most good. Like a lot of people don't know it, but they're playing social games and honestly kind of religious and moral games when they talk politics and they don't even realize it. And I think it's really unhelpful. And so like I found myself in a gathering the other day and I was a little tipsy. So I found myself just like instantly getting into like a deep like I just instantly started talking about Arab nationalism because again I did this video essay and I'm still a bit obsessed, you know what I mean? It's still there. And they were asking me questions and I was talking and I kind of realized like I'm making a lot of assumptions about these people. I don't know anything about them. And so when I say something, there's like a lot of assumptions that they understand that that's a bad thing or that's a good thing or that we're talking not just as a kind of like fun, we're having a conversation, but because this stuff matters and we need to figure it out so we can act. We need to have a decent like comprehension of what's happening so that we can have at least an ability to act in a meaningful way. Realizing I don't know what the fuck these people are. Turns out one of them was literally a countess, like an Italian countess from Venice. This white woman, like she just, God, not just the confidence, but the cockiness that she had of just like, I remember it was like four of us. We're all Lebanese. We're all talking to each other in Arabic, and she comes in. She's like, I want to understand what you're saying. Like I'm curious. It sounds like an interesting discussion. Sorry, I think that sounds more Spanish than Italian, but there's like the gall to just be like, I want to know. I don't know. And then we're talking, and she kept giving her opinion, and it's just a kind of like you know what I mean? I don't know. And then my favorite thing is then like there's like six of them. They all left at the same time, and they did not clean a single thing off the table. They brought drinks, they brought chips, they brought like my like oven pizzas. It wasn't my house. I was at some other person's house, but it was just like, oh, and this same Italian person, as soon as she walked in, she like knocked over a glass with her bag. Oh, oopsie! And she she kind of puts all the broken glasses together, but then like after she left, I was like, she just left it there. Like like it's so rude, but it's just so white. But again, I completely acknowledge sometimes that when I talk about white people, there is the kind of like, I'm not like them, I'm better, which is just not really helpful. Peasants, let me participate in your entertaining folly. Yes, yes. Hmm. Let me engage you with some banter. Have you heard the one about? Yeah. There was a little part of me in the video essay that I wanted to do that voice. Or no, in the last video essay, because I read out some quotes by Alfred Balfour. So I wanted to read it in this voice because I thought it would be quite funny, but at the same time I realized that it would be a tonal shift. Your posh accent is... yes. Quite. I've got a few impersonations, actually, a few impressions. I've worked on that one for a while. I knew this older Englishman who he had a posh accent, but it was just very unique, and I got really fucking good at impersonating it. His name actually it is quite similar to the... it's not that similar. Damn it, I think I've lost it. But they do a pretty good Zizek as well, which I'm not gonna do. I discovered as well that I do pretty good Jordan Peterson. For those who don't know, it's basically my Kermit the Frog voice. I can also do Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. If I ever... this is like my B plan if this whole like podcasting and like doing serious politics doesn't work out. I'll just be like a B-rate impersonator. Smithers! No, damn it, that's infected with my English accent. Excellent. Smithers, who's that? Oh, he's one of your droogs from Sector CB, sir. I like the cut of his jib. Bring him to me. Right away, sir. I'm thinking of doing an album of impersonations. I kind of realized, actually, this is way off topic. Someone asked me a serious question. Otherwise, I'm just going to go off. But I've kind of realized that impersonations is not as big of a thing anymore. And I think AI has a lot to do with that. I was watching this like British singer, this English singer, Joe Longthorne. And it's incredible. He's got an amazing voice, amazing control of his voice. But he would kind of like, this is like in the 70s and like in the 80s. And so he would do his Frank Sinatra, I've got you under my skin. And it's like amazing. And then like Sammy Davis Jr. and then Neil Diamond. Well, I don't know that much, but yeah, I kind of realized that it's, not that big of a thing anymore. And I think a part of it is AI, you know what I mean? Like you can literally just make an entire video. Like I can just, with a few words make a video where it's like, Jack Nicholson singing like Bob Dylan. Or then I can just do a Bob Dylan thing and like do my thing and then put the... So it's not as impressive, I guess. I don't know. I still think it's impressive. I don't know. Especially when you see it offline, analog. Oh boy. So anyone got any serious questions for me? I'm definitely going to do this again next week. I'm definitely going to also release the episode earlier so people can listen to it. But yeah, I'm planning on doing this every Sunday. So the regularity hopefully will bring more people in. Sorry. Realize I'm swaying a lot. I don't know if that's nauseating. But yeah. The episode definitely is one of many. I think there definitely is a lack of analysis on Lebanon. I think there's a lack of analysis from Lebanon. And I don't know, part of the reason that I left, not just that I could not be there anymore, is because like part of the goal of me leaving is so that I can get a space to breathe and think. And so I'm here now. just 3 years ago, but um, yeah, come up with like actually like describe things and you know what I mean? Like this exists with Palestine, but Lebanon, quite genuinely, the only place that I'm seeing that has like a kind of generative discourse or like knowledge production, like okay, I'm being a bit facetious, a bit like joking, but genuinely, it's the meme groups, the meme pages, and there are like very specific Lebanese memes. Um, I find sometimes the kind of like overriding ideology a bit toxic and like kind of tactic of it all. Um, like anyway, but that's kind of dangerous. You know what I mean? We definitely need some humor and sarcasm to deal with the absurd politics and being politically depressed, says Sofia Ciente. I agree, and that's why I do a lot of jokes, but that's why I also, my God, I'm gonna say it again in the video essay. There are a lot of jokes, especially when we're talking about um, Arab leaders and Arab regime. Very difficult not to crack a few jokes because they're ridiculous. When can we expect the elaboration on the Jordanian monarchy? Ooh, I've created certain suspense, have I? It'll come in due time. I mean, I don't think I have anything that special to add. I might do like a reel or something about the secret agreement that the Hashemites signed with the Zionists in 1947. But also, yeah, I do have to probably. I think next episode I'm just gonna do it on um, the Arab regimes, like a kind of like free Palestine, down with the Jordanian monarchy, down with Sisi. You know, because it's yeah. But I've got a lot of shit to say about the Jordanians and Egyptians. In the same time, and I noticed like very few people are, but um, there is an awareness. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. Like you go to the comment sections of a lot of these Arab news organizations or whatever, when they talk about like King Abdullah when he went to see Trump and whatever, uh, like like Arabs know, you know, that he's a piece of shit. Um, that the Hashemite monarchy is bad, is anti-Palestinian, is completely propped up by the U.S. And the EU. I mean, they're kind of shitting themselves, you know, and Trump knows what he's doing. Um, when he says like he says this very interesting thing, Trump. Um, when he was asked, I think on Fox News, like, how do you feel that your proposal for Gaza, essentially his proposal to continue the genocide, to ethnically cleanse millions of Palestinians, how do you feel about that? The reaction that the Egyptians and Jordanian monarchies have given, whatever. And Trump says, well, we pay them a lot of money. So I think we've got some leverage in there. Not we give them a lot of financial military aid. We pay them. You know, I think quite clear. And honestly, that is what it is. There's a reason why for the last 30 or so years, 40 years or something, that the the two largest recipients of U.S. military aid are Israel and Egypt. I think those are very connected. Um, like the reasons why they get so much U.S. money. I know it's a bit gauche. I'm very sorry. Gauche isn't the right word. Brand PR'd, how will Hezbollah try to regain power in the broader political sphere? I have no idea. I have no idea. Honestly, like, I think it's gonna be very interesting, but also like it's hard to access because it's not like a democratic party. It's not like a thing that like releases manifestos or holds like kind of national like whatever town hall meetings. But I'd find it very I'd find it very bizarre if after the this aggression, after the fall of Assad, after the death of Nasrallah, if there isn't a kind of visible shift, you know what I mean? Like they release a new manifesto or something. You know what I mean? Like a kind of, because like even Russia is kind of playing ball with the new Syrian president and like regime or government rather. It's not established enough to be a regime. Hezbollah hasn't seemed to be doing so. And so definitely backed into a corner. I think today was definitely like a big sign of like, the continuous presence and support and the like, but and they're still, they said they would like be working side by side with the building of the Lebanese state and the Lebanese army. But I have no idea moving forward. I'm not that type of analyst. Mari says, I think it's interesting to learn about how these regimes came to be historically as well. That's part of the topic of my video essay. That's like the main first part. Like the origins of Arab nationalism, which is the origins of a lot of these states. Initially, it was a longer section, but I cut it a bit. And so I might do a longer, just like dedicated episode, maybe with like Joey or someone else from the Periphery Collective to like, I thought it was quite boring to have too much in the video essay on Arab nationalism. But the origins of these things, the origins of the Hashemites, who kind of come from the Hijaz. But yeah, it's in there. Oy. And there's a lot of like colonial neocolonialism going on with these states and with these regimes. Or like a lot of people don't know, but the head of the Jordanian army from the 20s until till the like mid late 40s was literally a British officer by the name of John Bagot Glubb. You want to take a look at this fine specimen of a man? Oh, that's my email. That's preferences. That's Chrome. That's Firefox. John Bagot Glubb. I love saying Bagot with a hard T. What? Oh, club. Glub. Why are there no photos of this man? What's going on? Okay. What if I just put Glub Pasha? Yeah, there you go. Look at this guy. Look at that chin. There you go. Look at him dressed in a kufi. British imperialist fuck. Yeah, it really frustrates me. Like, honestly, there's so much scholarship that Arabs, I don't know, like, there's not enough on it and a kind of self analysis. And so a lot of the books on people like Glubb on the Hashemites and the like are written by people like Benny Morris, who at one point was a kind of respected historian. He's Israeli. And oh, جند بين العرب مشاهد تاريخي. Oh, ترجمة. Okay, so this was originally written in English or something. But yeah, Benny Morris sort of like, I think what's described is he did a mea culpa in 2002 during the Second Intifada. And you know, he's one of these historians that was like, yeah, there was something called the fucking Nakba. We did it. And then he and all these historians got a lot of shit. And a lot of them stood their ground, were like, no, we did the research, this is what happened. But Benny Morris is one of the who was like, who took it back and was like, oh, okay, this happened, but now in retrospect, oh, it was, you know, necessary because it was a war. Do you think Syria wants to be a respectable country for the West in the future? I've heard jokes about them hosting the next Olympics. Haven't heard that. They definitely, Shara has definitely, and his like government around him has been basically on like a charm offensive for the last 3 months. Most like, I talk about this a bit in the episode, like a bit obnoxiously, they've been doing gross, honestly, like interviews with former like neoconservative politicians. The Syrian foreign minister, for instance, did an interview with Tony Blair in Davos, and yeah, it's definitely a charm offensive. Or I don't know how that's gonna pan out, especially with like now also with like increased Israeli occupation of Syrian territory. Not a lot of knowledge about British Mandate Palestine. Oof. That's where it all really begins. Um, I think in order to understand the Nakba of 1948, you need to understand the Palestinian Revolt of 1936, what some call a revolution, or you know, and a lot of the stuff that happened. I think Saeed says this, that what happened in 48 already kind of happened in 36. That rebellion was crushed. The political leadership was pushed into exile. And actually, this is one of the Ian Pape's great contributions through his scholarship. One of the good new historians in the ethnic cleansing. Because it's in this book and in the research of this book that Ian Pape, an Israeli historian, uncovers the specific plans by the Israelis, by the Zionists and the Zionist militias, called Plan Dalit, right? To like the actual orchestrated plan to push out as many Palestinians from historic Palestine. But very specifically, he also finds something that he describes as the village files, which is basically the information, the very, very meticulous information that the British gathered about Palestinians, every single town, every city, the political leadership, how many like olive groves, how many lemon trees, how many orange trees, who are the main players, people, families, etc. And it's this accumulation of data and information that once the Zionists were able to get a hold of, that they used that information to basically then, control the situation, alongside the fact that the political leadership had already been in exile for 10 years to then do the Nakba. It's a very important read, this, I think. And again, not because like he says good stuff, but the scholarship, like it's a contribution to the knowledge because of the access that he had to the archives. And so the village files, for instance, it's a very important thing. Syria is still sanctioned by the West. Yeah. They want to get rid of those sanctions. Yes, there is going to be a movie about the 36 revolution with, with Jeremy Irons. I didn't know, but with Saleh Bakri. I have a very big crush on Saleh Bakri. I mean, who doesn't? He's been around for a while. I've seen him in a lot of films. He's a grade A cutie. But I think the film is called 36 or something. Yeah. This film is directed by one of my favorite directors, the director of my favorite film, period, which also stars Saleh Bakri, which is called Khwajib. If I can get a better picture. Fucking love this film. I can't get enough of it. I've screened it several times. I've watched it, I think, 6 times. I cry every time. I see something new every time. This is Saleh Bakri, and this is Muhammad Bakri. Muhammad Bakri is the director that I was talking about at the very beginning of this stream, who made the film Janine in 2002. And so it's a father and son, two Palestinian. Oh, very sorry, you're not seeing this. This whole time I've been talking, you haven't been seeing what I'm doing. But anyway, Saleh Bakri, Muhammad Bakri, playing a father and son in the film. So like the chemistry is there, and it's great. But also because it's a film set in Nazareth in Palestine, in 48 Palestine, and intergenerational conflict is a theme in the film. And so to have these two actors, I don't know, it's a fantastic film. I love it. I always found this dress to be quite hideous, though. The Bakris, yeah. They're great. Highly recommend Wajib. I might do new screenings, actually. Would people be interested if I did screenings? And maybe even like this. Because I figured out, if I do this kind of thing. Because I've noticed one thing that I've always loved doing, and it's a bit obnoxious, but I guess that's what streaming is these days, is to be like watching something with someone and then constantly pause it to give like additional info. Like, did you know that this guy actually won or whatever? And he did you see that? Did you see what he did there? I won't do that with Wajib. I have too much respect for it, but yeah. It's also interesting about the Palestinian cities in 48 and Israel. They don't talk about that a lot when talking about Palestinians being no, yeah. No, and again, like there's a lot of reductiveness when it comes to a lot of things Palestinian. And for instance, yeah, there's like almost like no recognition of the 2 million Palestinians that live like Palestinian citizens of the state of Israel. And like I'm not saying that there's anything like I don't know what that would then reach, but it's just like there's not this clarity, this sort of understanding, this kind of like, you know what I mean? fuller picture. Um, like I know this from a very personal experience when I met a Palestinian person who lives in Haifa. And there was just this moment of just like, oh, or like I found it a bit strange that I'd never spoken to someone who is from and lives in Haifa. And I realized Haifa is just this place that like exists in our imagination and is a place that either like once it's liberated would go there, or that it's a place, that like a lot of people talk about striking. So talking to this person, there was a kind of moment of like, fuck, I don't know any like, and that lack of study, I think, is honestly fucked, and it's something that's so on us that like needs to change. Like in many ways, we don't know shit about Israeli society. We don't know shit about Palestinians in like whatever. It's a huge thing, but again, Wajib is one of these films that like has such a detailed, intimate portrayal that like just like yeah, it feels like a I don't know, it's beautiful. Pop up video that could be fun for a movie. What's pop up video? Remember pop up video? Are you gonna make me Google this? Pop up video. The hell is this? Oh, oh, it's a game. Oh, I'm in a terrible location. Unlock me. Put me up here. Oh, commentary on. Oh, Mark is 28 here with a living mother. What does that mean? The first stall in is the least often occupied. What is that true? The first stall is the least often occupied by bathroom users? No, I don't remember this. We didn't get MTV much actually. Ugh. That tattoo was inked on set. We'd sometimes get MTV when we'd go to like Saudi, but in Lebanon, very like it's so weird. Sometimes we'd have it, sometimes we wouldn't. It was very inconsistent. Oh, I've been doing this for 2 hours. I was wondering why am I feeling a little tired. I mean, it's always nice getting additional facts about something. I think it's the same thing on. You still see it on Instagram a bit. Did you know? It's like clickbait, or it's the same logic of it. Things you didn't know about music videos from the 90s. My little clip-on microphone. I've never actually clipped it. Damn it, that's really confusing actually. Sorry, because the camera's a bit flipped, so You might see me like this at some point. All right. Well then, if no one's got any pressing questions about the episode sovereignty, I kind of present a bit of an analysis there because I realize that uh, most people have a hard time connecting the history of Lebanon with the history of Palestine and with essentially like the fate of the region that's like interconnected. And the only people that are doing that, I think it's like have like there's a mismatch of like analysis and strategy. Um yeah. Anyway, um I think that's it for me today. Night. I've actually been sleeping a bit earlier these days. Sorry, this isn't my podcast, but it's a live stream, so I don't give a shit. Um, Last night I slept at like 1 a.m. or whatever. I woke up at 9. I'm dreaming so much about school. Don't understand why. Like literally my middle school crush, who I haven't thought about in like 10 years. I'm dreaming about her like every night. My family's history weaves through Palestine, Lebanon, and Syria. Yeah. No, like it's a very mixed region for sure. It's just like when you read like certain histories of Lebanon, you listen to people talk about Lebanon. There's a kind of constant attempt at describing, and this is part of the violence, I think, or like the erasures of nationalism, intellectually, where it's kind of like trying to find a history that then, uh, like makes sense just for Lebanon. Like, where does Lebanon come about for the Lebanese for whatever? And it's bullshit. Um, Bran asks, does that count as a sign in your dream? Yeah. I mean, why her specifically? I've talked to my analyst about it, but I don't know. I don't know why. Dreaming a lot about school days. It's definitely a lot of reasons, but very specifically this person. I don't know why. You know, think a lot about it. Maybe the innocence of youth that feel like they have gone with time and with trauma and with experience. Perchance. So that's been another. That's it for me. I'm gonna. Sorry, I need to stop looking at the chat because I could get distracted. Aren't all the famous Arab? No, there are Arab celebrities all over. Aren't all the famous Arab celebrities from somewhere else, like Egyptian actors? Oh, what? Do you mean like Dalido? I need to stop doing this actually. Sorry. I need to take a firm line when I say I'm done. But let's just I'll let this slide this time. My fault. I haven't established ways of working. Gonna give you a few more seconds. No, okay. So thank you very much for joining. Um this is the tip jar, kofi.com/amonmac. And yeah, even just a few bucks sort of boosts my self-esteem, helps me keep doing this stuff, makes me know that I'm doing something worth whatever. And yeah, see you all next time. Ciao.